Thank you. Honorable members, order. Order, honorable members. Honorable members, before we proceed with today's business, I wish to announce that the vacancy which occurred in the National Assembly owing to the resignation of Honorable A.F. Mutambi has been filled with effect from the 30th of November 2022 by the nomination of Honorable Mr. M.E. Dlamini. Order, honorable members. Order, honorable members. The member has made a subscribed affirmation in the Deputy Speaker's office. I welcome you, Honorable Dlamini. Honorable members, the first item on the order paper is the motion in the name of the Chief Whip of the Majority Party. I now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Greetings to the honorable members of this House. Honorable House Chair, I move that the House, in terms of Section 51, subsection 3 of the rules and of the Constitution Act 108 of 1996, Rule 43, subsection 2, to resolve to sit at the Cape Town City Hall on the 13th December 2022 for the consideration of the report of Section 89 independent panel established in terms of Rule 129A up to Q of the rules of the National Assembly. I move for this change of venue, Honorable House Chair.
I now put the motion before the House. Any objections? The motion agreed to. The first reading order, the first order of the day. The Secretary will read the first order of the day.
Consideration of Children's Amendment Bill and of report of Portfolio Committee on Social Development thereon.
I now recognize Honorable N.Q. Mvana to introduce the bill.
Oh, thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, the bill that we're talking about is to amend the Children's Act of 2005. So to amend and insert certain definitions to provide for the children's right to privacy and protection of information. To further provide for the rights of unmarried fathers, to extend childhood development programs, to also provide for the designation of functions for a register of the National Child Protection Register. To further provide for the care and abandonment of orphaned children and additional matters that may be regulated. To also provide for the rules relating to care and protection proceedings, to further provide for medical testing of children in need of care and protection or adoption, to provide for additional matters relating to children in alternative case, to further provide for matters relating to adoption and inter-country adoption, to further provide for the hearing of child abduction matters, to further provide for matters relating to surrogate motherhood, and to provide for matters connected therewith. The portfolio, Chairperson of SOCDEV, having considered the proposed amendments by the National Council of Provinces to the Children's Amendment Bill, referred to it on the 22nd November of 2022. If we look at ATC 22 of November, reports it agrees to the amendments. Rule 288, Section 3 of F of the National Assembly states in the report that the committee must, if it is not unanimously report, one, it specify in which respects and why there was no consensus. Two, in addition to the views representative of the majority in the committee, convey any views of a majority in the committee in order to facilitate debate when the report comes before the House. Members of the majority parties members of the minority parties objected to the adoption of the Children's Amendment Bill. But what I would like to emphasize and express in the National Assembly is that as the Portfolio Committee, as we are the majority, the Portfolio Committee on SOCDEV recommends that this House adopts this report and approves the second reading of the Children's Amendment Act. Aluta, continue.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I will now recognize any political party that wishes to make a declaration. The usual times for declaration of votes will apply. I now recognize the DA.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson, on the 8th of November, when it was clear.
Honorable Makaula. I was just notifying Honorable Makaula to switch off her mic. You may proceed, Honorable Member.
Honorable Chairperson, on the 8th of November, when it was clear that the department would not make the deadline of 11 November 2022, the North Gauteng High Court said in part, and I quote, "It is in the best interest of the children in the Republic that the period stipulated in clause 3.1 of the order made by the court on the 12th November 2020 is hereby extended by a further period of 12 months from the date of this order to 11 November 2023. While this is a grave indictment on the minister and the department, given the now 12 years that the foster care crisis has been going on, it should also have been a welcome opportunity by the minister and the department to incorporate the amendments that are pertinent to the foster care crisis as proposed by 5 of the 9 provinces during the NCOP public hearing process. Instead, the proposals were not even considered, and all we are supposed to approve today are commas and full stops. This is in direct contrast to the best interests of the children that the High Court, as the upper guardians of all children, refers to. It is no secret that the extension was required because the DSD still has a backlog, although reduced, of expired foster care orders, and if the North Gauteng High Court was not extended, SASSA would be obliged to stop paying these children's foster child grants. North Gauteng High Court order is the only reason why SASSA can legally pay foster child grants in cases where the child's foster care order is expired. It is disconcerting, therefore, to imagine what would have happened to the many foster child grant recipients had the North Gauteng High Court not extended the order. When the Children's Amendment Bill amendments start taking effect, they will gradually reduce the demand for foster care and the backlog of extensions. The demand could have been reduced much quicker if the amendments proposed by the 5 provinces to Section 1501A and Section 1592A in the NCOP process had been considered. As the bill stands, it provides no immediate solution to the foster care orders that will expire in 2023. Why the department and ANC keep pushing the consideration of these sections to a later stage is confusing at best and deeply concerning at worst. It is reasonable to predict that the backlog is here to stay until the Children's Act clarifies that social workers should prioritize poverty relief for orphaned children in the care of relatives. This means immediately referring them to SASSA to get the child support grant top up and not attempting to process them through the overburdened foster care system, resulting in years before families receive any income support. We call on the minister to use the extension granted by the North Gauteng High Court to reconsider the 2 amendments to the 2 sections as mentioned by above, as this will deal once and for all with the 12-year-old crisis and will be her legacy as the Minister of Social Development. It is concerning to learn that after days of hearings by the NCOP and inputs by provinces, there was absolutely no committee discussion on what amendments they wanted the drafting team to do. The characterization of what took place can be best referred to as a complete abdication of the committee's lawmaking mandate to department and parliament officials. In spite of all the mayhem that has ensued in the foster care space, we note with appreciation the progress made by some provincial departments of social development in promoting the use of the long-term Section 1862 extensions and call on those provinces that have lagged behind to put the best interests of children of the Republic at the center of the work they do. It is also concerning that some provinces have been issuing temporary extensions done on affidavit with no home visits or social worker report, and call on the department to not hide these reporting so that the portfolio committee can know what the full extent of the backlog is at any given time. This will allow for proper oversight, seeking of solution based on reliable information. South Africa's children deserve no less. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I now recognize the EFF.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. House Chairperson, the EFF rejects the Children's Amendment Bill in its current form and the committee reports. When the bill was sent back to the portfolio, we were told that the bill was sent back to the NA because of minor corrections, spelling errors, and some dates. But this is not true. The reality is that the colleagues in the NCOP went to communities and received substantive submissions. 5 provinces in the NCOP raised substantive objections in Section 105 and 109. These objections were not even considered or presented to the portfolio committee. This is how parliamentary legal advisors mislead us by acting as if they have hidden interest. The EFF has repeatedly and constantly raised the issue of foster care. There's a huge crisis in the foster care system because of a backlog that is not being resolved. Placing children in foster care is done through a court order, and it's intended to provide a conducive environment for children with positive support. House Chairperson, we still have a shortage of social workers and tools of trade for social workers like cars. There's a shortage of cars, so how can the social workers be effective? We still have a shortage of social supervisors, Vanna, to manage cases allocated and cash flow. Due to COVID, more than 150 children were orphaned, placed in overcrowded homes, or with relatives did not have the space or means to look after them. The court deadline has still not met, and the end has asked for a further extension. Otherwise, the children won't get their foster grants for this month, and therefore the EFF reject this report and bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I now recognize the IFT.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I will keep my video off because my connection is unstable. House Chairperson, South Africa is a country at war with its women and children. Our numbers tell this story. Malnutrition amongst children is rising. Tragically, 3 children are murdered daily, and it's clear that the system meant to protect our vulnerable children is failing them. When the Children's Amendment Bill was first tabled to the National Assembly, The IFP decried a flawed process. We decried the inaction of a department that had to be forced by the North Gauteng High Court to find a legal solution to South Africa's foster care crisis. This is a crisis 12 years in the making. When the bill left the National Assembly, it was sent to the NCOP to conduct its own processes. Against this background, the KZN Portfolio Committee on Social Development, for example, held 6 public hearings covering 11 districts. Submissions from all 9 provinces were received, but surprisingly, not a single proposal from KZN and other provinces were considered or even responded to by this department. It is now clear that the original flawed process, as highlighted by the IFP and others, was simply repeated at provincial level. The chairperson stated in her introduction that the bill dealt with the rights of unmarried fathers and matters relating to adoption, but this is not true. We didn't deal with it. Some of the voices, in fact, that were ignored were those of unmarried fathers. We also heard many voices telling us of a department that is anti-adoption, something the IFP has raised consistently. Now, the Johannesburg High Court has confirmed that the Department of Social Development delays adoptions and often harasses or bullies women who want to put their babies up for adoption. Just as upsetting is the fact that recently during the Portfolio Committee meeting on the foster care crisis, one province made mention of the fact that some foster families are untraceable. It goes without saying that if foster parents are untraceable, the children in their care are also untraceable. These are vulnerable children who have been lost while in the care of the state. This points to a deepening crisis as it pertains to the welfare of our vulnerable children. Chairperson, the IFP is resolutely in favor of strengthening legislation that seeks to protect the well-being of our children. But we cannot fall in line with a process that simply seeks to tick a box to satisfy a court order. The IFP once more calls on the Minister of Social Development to come back to the National Assembly in 2023 and table an urgent plan of action outlining exactly how government plans to employ the thousands of state-trained social workers who are sitting at home. 17,000 social workers are currently doing the work of 70,000 social workers. Until we get an explanation of how this department loses children in the foster care system, a plan on the employment of social workers, a plan on how this department will fix its
Thank you, Honourable
anti-adoption
Member. Your
stance,
time is up. Thank you.
and
very
until
much.
this department becomes the
Thank-
vanguard of
Thank you,
children,
Honourable Member.
we cannot
Honourable-
support this report. Thank you.
I now recognize the FF Plus.
Thank you, House Chair. Chairperson, the other House had an opportunity to actually improve on this bill. They could have taken the provinces and opposition parties' concerns into account and effected real change in this bill. They could have put the children first, yet they chose not to. The unfortunate fact is that even though there were good proposals made and many provinces agreed on these proposals, the other House did not improve or change the bill, bar a few semantic changes, and did not improve that which is fundamentally wrong with this bill. The bill as it is here today remains flawed and does not speak to the actual challenges being faced within the foster care space. The problems as raised when this bill was debated here, and I will not repeat myself. This bill has been pending since 2011 and is nothing other than a checkbox exercise for the ruling party. The fact of the matter is that we are failing our children. Our children deserve better. South Africa deserves better. We will not support this bill or report. I thank you.
Thank you. I now recognize ACDP.
Thank you, Chair. The Children's Act is the country's most important piece of legislation for vulnerable children. It therefore follows that any amendments we make to the Act should be in children's best interests. This Children's Amendment Bill should reflect their voices, their needs, and include the protection measures most necessary to keep them safe. But it was not the stories of orphans in need of financial support and family care that drove this bill. Instead, the driving force in the incomplete and inadequate bill approved by Parliament was political expediency
expediency that has overridden the needs of our country's most vulnerable children. It is common knowledge, Chair, that the Children's Amendment Bill was designed to provide a comprehensive legal solution to the country's decades-long foster care crises, a response to the North Gauteng High Court ruling in 2011. Government was ordered to amend the Children's Act to fix the foster care system. Yet, despite the negative effect of the broken foster care system on orphans, courts have been forced to intervene on 6 separate occasions over the last 11 years to stop foster care orders lapsing and prevent children losing their foster care grants. Although the goal of the bill is to strengthen protective measures for children, the Department of Social Development did not act with urgency to get the bill passed. And despite eventually inducing Parliament and the NCOP to expedite the bill to try to meet the most recent court deadline of November 2022, it failed in its goal, requiring an additional extension. The result was yet another court order and a rushed and flawed bill. There was no debate over clauses, an exclusion of all content included by the opposition, and the eventual rubber stamping of the bill. It is predictably the consequence. It is predictably the consequence of political expediency. This bill fails to provide capable unmarried fathers with the right to care for their children. It contains a definition of a child in need of care and protection that both contradicts the Department of Social Development's National Child Care and Protection Policy, and it could result in social workers placing children with relatives where there has been no attachment. It could further lead to lengthy screening processes before children are deemed eligible for the child support grant top-up and cause children already in foster care to lose their foster care grant. The ACDP will not support this bill, and we cannot support this bill because it provides no protection for children that are vulnerable. I thank you.
Thank you. I now recognize the UTM. ATM. Good,
House Chair, we have no declaration. Thank you.
thank you. NFP. AIC,
No declaration, House Chair.
thank you. COPE,
No declaration. Thank you very much.
thank you. PAC,
No declaration, Chair.
Al-Jamal,
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair. Honorable House Chair, when I was a young man, I worked in the Department of Foster Care for the department, and it was called the Department of Colored Affairs in those days. So I've got a good understanding of the foster care system, and I support the honorable members who are very concerned that the governing party got an instruction from the presidency to comply with constitutional court orders to meet deadlines, and was very disappointed to hear that the member of the portfolio committee tells this house that we've got the numbers and we will do just what we want to do. So they didn't listen to the representation of several provinces. Many of the provinces are run by the African National Congress. It looks like the members of the portfolio committee has not learned from Chief Albert Lutuli. We promoted the concept of fatherhood. They haven't learned the passion that President Mandela had for children. They are just interested in carrying orders of the presidency to meet deadlines, and they're not taking into account the valuable contributions that members of opposition parties have raised in this house and also in the other house. And I'm very disappointed with the leadership in the other house that they are not giving guidance and leadership to the National Assembly. That's their purpose. They mustn't just tick boxes. So Al-Jamaa will not support this report. Thank you very much.
thank you, Honorable Member. I now recognize the ANC.
Thank you. Doesn't mean anything. Thank you very much. Don't have ideas. Honorable House Chair, thank you very much. The adoption of the Children's Amendment Bill is indeed a milestone in the history of the current administration. It is also quite significant that this process is concluded in a month where there is a global commemoration of both the World AIDS Day and the 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children. This presents a clear linkage between the displacement of children affected by HIV and AIDS, as well as gender-based violence and femicide. The development of the bill partly arises from the challenges of the onslaught of the HIV and AIDS pandemic on many young children in the early 2000s, and is a response to the scourge of GBVF, which continues to claim the lives of many women, leaving children displaced and requiring state support. It must be noted, House Chair, that the driving force behind this is indeed the dedication and commitment to protect our children, some of whom still suffer as a result of being removed as well as being isolated from foster care because of a range of socioeconomic challenges that plague our communities. It is in this regard that the Children's Amendment Bill seeks to update and add definitions to the Children's Act of 2005, as well as to further protect children's rights to privacy, as well as to protect their information, as well as to extend the jurisdiction of the Children's Court, and also to strengthen the work of the department further by enhancing the bill, in particular, to providing and protecting the rights of unmarried fathers, providing for funding of early childhood development programs, providing for the designation and duties of a registrar for the National Child Protection Register. Also, House Chair, providing for the rights relating to surrogate motherhood, providing for process relating to adoption as well as international adoption, providing for the hearing of children abduction matters, including making provision for other associated matters affecting our children. It must be noted, House Chair, that throughout this process, the department has had to deal with the revision of other articles that are indeed unrelated to foster care due to the complexity of the process of revising the laws to permit the improvement of foster care procedure. This was also marked by the unfolding political dynamics as indicated by the committee chair within the portfolio committee, which could be perceived in some instances as a deliberate attempt to derail the adoption of the amendments to the Children's Act. Needless to say, House Chair, the challenges that confronted the portfolio committee throughout this process were not unabated. It is, however, necessary to appreciate that in the phase of implementation of this Children's Act, it will be imperative that all platforms for strong social compacts be established. It must also be emphasized, House Chair, that the public consultation as well as other relevant stakeholder engagements has been an important part during this process and should be maintained in order for us to ensure that the views and aspirations of all South Africans are inscribed throughout this process. In light of this, if the Department of Social Development operates independently from numerous social partners and stakeholders that plays a role in this sector, it will be really impossible to meaningfully improve the lives of our children. It is important, therefore, House Chair, that we appreciate that numerous civil society members, as well as religious, including cultural organizations, have contributed to the work that the Department of Social Development and its various entities do. It is very critical that some partnerships are both nurtured and also used as vehicles to ensure that children's rights are protected, also that they are never found to be compromised. As we conclude, Housing Chair, the January 8th movement welcomes and adopts the Children's Amendment Bill, which was processed by the Portfolio Committee on the 30th of November 2022. The finalization of the processes with regard to the bill pertaining to children's rights, and in particular the foster care system, as well as the early childhood development are prioritized. It is important to note that while some challenges were encountered during this process with the opposition not supporting certain aspects of the bill, the ANC has been successful in leading the program towards the adoption and consideration of this bill. This bill is, in our view, an important step in protecting our children and strengthening systems that are in place to take care and protect their well-being, and the movement of the people as Parliament to adopt the bill as well. Our children, our future leaders. Ke a leboga.
Thank you. Honorable members, are there any objections to the bill as amended be passed? DA,
House Chair, please note the objection of the DA.
noted.
House
SADP,
Chair, please note the objection of the EFF.
EFF, ACDP,
Please note the objection of the ACDP, House Chair.
thank you very much.
House Chairperson,
Yeah, FF plus,
please note the objection of the FF plus, House Chair.
thank you. The objection shall be recorded
Chairperson.
accordingly.
Honorable House Chair.
1 second,
Ajama.
Honorable Kulego.
House Chairperson, please note the objection of the IFP.
Thank you, Honorable Shengwa.
Honorable House
Honorable-
Chair, Honorable House Chair, please note the objection of Al Jama.
Al Jama. Thank you very much. The objection shall be recorded accordingly. The bill will be sent to the Honorable President for assent. Honorable members, the Secretary will read the second order of the day.
Consideration of first report of National Assembly Rules Committee for 2022 on rule amendments, guidelines, and principles of ruling.
Thank you. I now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party from the chamber.
Thank you very much, House Chair. House Chair, I move that this August House adopts this report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I will now recognize the political parties wishing to make a declaration. Please. Oh, sorry. I now recognize the Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Color A right, Gakul, it was there before the EFF was born. Thank you very much, Honorable House Chairperson, honorable members, I greet you all. The National Assembly Rules Committee met on the 4th and the 23rd of November when it considered inter alia a number of rules amendments and guidelines. Rules amendments concern virtual and hybrid sittings, bringing objects into the House, and the number of ministerial replies on a question day. Guidelines relate to the removal of members from the chamber and the use of backgrounds for virtual meetings. Other matters concern delay replies to questions and principle of ruling. Honorable House Chairperson, the Speaker as the Chairperson of the Rules Committee hereby presents the first report of the Rules Committee for 2022, dated 23rd of November, 2022 as follows. Honorable members, please take note that I'm delivering this report on behalf of the Speaker. Thank you very much. As a member of the Rules Committee as well. Rule amendments. In the report, amendment of rule on virtual and hybrid meetings. On the 9th of June 2022, or 2020, the National Assembly adopted rules for virtual meetings. These rules allows the House and its committees to meet using online platform. The Assembly has adopted a mostly hybrid system where some members are present in the chamber and others online. While the rules apply to all virtual sittings, the technical amendments relating to the insertion in the rules of the word
hybrid will ensure there is no ambiguity when reference is made to these type of proceedings. Honorable House Chairperson, the purpose of this rule is to enable the National Assembly and its committees to hold compliant virtual and hybrid meetings using technological platforms. The rules of the National Assembly remain in operation and are supplemented by this rule in order to provide the virtual meetings. Honorable House Chairperson, the application of the rule is as follows. This rule apply to the sittings of the National Assembly in the event of a physical sitting is not possible without the use of a technological platforms as determined by the Speaker. B, meetings of committees in the event a physical meeting is not possible without the use of technological platforms as determined by the Chairperson. Honorable House Chairperson, in this rule, the Speaker or Chairperson of a committee shall issue a notice and agenda for the virtual or hybrid meeting, which must include the date and time of the meeting. All documents of the meeting shall be distributed by electronic means which members have access. The venue for the virtual or hybrid meeting shall be deemed to be Cape Town as the seat of Parliament. Honorable House Chairperson, with regard to privilege and order in meetings, in a virtual or hybrid meetings, members shall have the same powers, privileges, and immunities which they ordinarily enjoy in parliamentary proceedings. And where relevant, current rules on order in public meetings and order in debate shall apply. Honorable House Chairperson, Part B, presiding officers in a virtual or hybrid meetings, the presiding officer or chairperson of a committee shall have all powers as provided for in the current rules. The quorum required shall be those as determined by the Constitution and the rules of the House. Members who have accessed the meeting via the secure link sent to their email addresses shall be deemed present for the purposes of establishing a quorum, taking a decision, or voting on a matter. Honorable House Chairperson, with regard to voting, members shall be entitled to cast their votes either electronically, by voice, or by having their vote recorded by their respective chief whips. The procedure to be followed is predetermined by the Speaker, and directives are announced in the meeting by the presiding officer or chairperson of a committee. Only members who are present when a vote is called shall be permitted to vote. The results of a vote are announced, and where possible, the names of members and how they voted are recorded in the minutes and proceedings. And members must ensure that their votes are correctly recorded. Honorable House Chairperson, with regard to public involvement, access to proceedings must be facilitated in a manner consistent with participatory representative democracy, and where possible, a virtual or hybrid meeting must be live streamed. Honorable House Chairperson, with regard to process guidelines, the Secretary to Parliament, together with authorized officials and technical teams, are responsible for technical support to facilitate a virtual or a hybrid meeting. The Secretariat must be given at least 3 days notice of a meeting. Pre-conference testing must take place at least a day before the meeting. Technical support must be available during a virtual or hybrid meeting. The Secretariat must maintain the minutes, and records of proceedings. The Secretariat must maintain a
Thank
system
you.
that
Thank you
is
very much.
capable. Honorable House Chairperson, I move that this report be adopted by this House as
Sure.
adopted in the Rules Committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member. I will now recognize political parties wishing to make a declaration. The usual times for declaration of votes will apply. The DA.
Thank you very much, House Chair. House Chair, this committee has a unique opportunity to rectify the errors of the past and restore Parliament's accountability teeth. This institution and this committee has an ability to make sure that Parliament is restored to what it is meant to be, to do what it is meant to do as the Constitution has envisioned it. However, often members of the ANC in this House like to crow about the 9 wasted years as though ibingengabo bebephayana voting to protect the ANC and its compromised president. Ikwanini nangoku who refused to learn from the lessons of the 5th Parliament. Ikwanini nangoku who are playing fast and loose with every report that has advised us on how to strengthen Parliament's oversight role. The Rules Committee has been tasked to unpack the recommendations of the State Capture Commission report. Instead, the Speaker delayed this process all year round. Instead, she made a problematic argument that we ought to wait for the President's implementation plan before we can get started with our work. This once again demonstrated the fundamental misunderstanding of the ANC of the role of Parliament and the importance of its independence from the executive. This has been proven by the series of awful decisions that this committee has made. The DA proposed the reintroduction of interpellations. Interpellations, a minute debate which allows for the interrogation of a particular issue. These interpellations were simply discontinued back in 2002 for no apparent reason. And so now we are saying, because Parliament has often been found wanting in its role of holding the executive to account, let's reintroduce interpellations into our rules so that we can make sure that we interrogate issues and we interrogate ministers as we are meant to do. It has got nothing to do with our political parties, but everything to do with South Africans and the people who sent us here. It enhances accountability and greater accountability, but the committee shut it down. They voted down the recommendations with no care in the world about what it is meant to do and the role that the committee is meant to do. Now, the committee is also delaying the recommendation of establishing a portfolio committee for the presidency. This is despite spirited motivations that have been made by various political parties about why we need a committee for Vote 1 and for Vote 1 to be held accountable. There seems to be a misunderstanding that Vote 1 has an actual budget and that with a president now that has amassed a lot of executive powers within his presidency, it has become critically important for us to have a special committee that deals with Vote 1. But once again, there's dilly-dallying, there's merry-go-round, there's umming and ahhing, because of course the ANC has no interest in making Parliament work. Instead, when they know that when Parliament works, South Africa works, and when Parliament works, they're in trouble. Years ago, a Quarter report was commissioned to look into how to strengthen the oversight mechanisms of Parliament. After that, a high-level report was commissioned to do the same thing. And most recently, R1 billion was spent on the Zondo Commission report, which makes a series of recommendations on how we can make this institution what it should be. Sadly, the Rules Committee is likely to treat these recommendations in a similar fashion. We are likely to treat the Zondo Commission the similar way we treated the Quarter report, which is gathering dust somewhere. Likely to treat the Zondo Commission in a similar way that the high-level report has been done. We keep spending money commissioning reports to tell us what we already know. What we already know is that we have been sent here to hold the executive to account, to pass legislation, but we are doing none of those things. The more things change, the more things stay the same. And clearly what really needs to change in the next parliament is for us to remove the ANC from this majority. If this committee, it would help you to pay attention. Thank you, Honorable Powerful. If this committee does not change its ways, we will no doubt have Nkandla 2.0, State Capture 2.0, and Phala Phala 2.0, because the one common denominator is this organization.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Order, honorable members. EFF.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Chairperson, Parliament is a channel through which a diversity of political views ought to find expression, unhindered and without rigid provisions that prevent members of Parliament from holding the executive to account. Legislative houses are not extensions of the executive and cannot be used to protect the executive from accounting for their actions. These amendments to the rules are nothing more than yet another attempt by the thoroughly discredited leadership of the ruling party to use Parliament to cover their incompetence and corruption. The amendment of Rule 64E, preventing members from displaying placards, is a direct response to the silent protest of the EFF waged against a Mr. Enoch Gondongwana for a series of his missteps, both in his personal capacity and his official capacity. The right to air divergent views cannot be interfered with, as the amendment of this rule now seeks to do. The amendment of Rule 138.7 to reduce the quota of questions to a minister may answer on a question day from 10 to 4 is also a means of ensuring that ministers are never held to account in an efficient way. Ministers come to answer questions once a quarter, so there's no reason for limiting them to answering just 4 questions per quarter. Lastly, the fact that the Rules Committee has not paid enough attention to the sensitivity of removing female members of Parliament from the House is very concerning. The assumption that female members of the protection services cannot be violent towards female members of Parliament is presumptuous and painfully inaccurate. The amendment of Rule 73.13 and 2013 does not help address in any way the concern of the violence perpetuated against female members of Parliament when getting removed from this Parliament. More instructively, these amendments do not explicitly prohibit the use of violence by protection services when removing members of Parliament, thereby giving these rogue officers the right to abuse and beat up members of Parliament without worrying about being held accountable. We reject this report and the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. IFP.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Sorry about that.
Order, honorable members.
May I proceed,
honorable members, please stop rejecting each other. IFP.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson, the rules of the National Assembly are intended to protect our citizens in accordance with our constitutional values and upon which hard-fought democracy rests. To ensure that the rights and liberties as promised to all who live in South Africa are achievable means that the state demands an accountable, transparent, and willing executive. One of our key tools in Parliament in trying to accomplish these necessary values is to ask questions to the executive on state matters regarding their departments. Unfortunately, the work and respect for this state institution, which is Parliament, seems to be lost to some members of the executive, as they fail to meet the deadlines or answer questions at all. The IFP is not satisfied that the current amendments will achieve the objective that we want. Another concern is that even in answering questions, it must be made mandatory for ministers who are involved in question sessions to be physically present in Parliament. Of late, we've had issues where we've had to adjourn, we've had to wait, and ministers had connectivity problems. And it was the Minister of Communications, Nohab, that had those problems. And we cannot have a situation where ministers are not physically present to at least answer questions once a quarter. In the current context of South Africa's relationship between government and citizens, accountability is something that is at the top of every person's mind. So this requires a greater response from Parliament when performing its duty of oversight. As I said, we will accept the amendment and wait and see. Honourable Chairperson, it is very well to have rules and amendments that are before this House, but what matters is what happens afterwards. The implementation of these rules is key to the functioning of Parliament and gives real meaning to the operation. Honourable Chairperson, in this regard, we have a rule 129, we have section 89, we have a panel that was set up to make an inquiry into the what we call the Pala matter. They have produced a report. It is our report, and we are waiting in anticipation to see that the Speaker, on behalf of all of us in Parliament, will object to any attempt to negate the findings of this report, but that's a matter for another day. While in accepting the current amendments, the IFP is eagerly anticipating its proposal to the Subcommittee on Rules to bring about greater accountability in Parliament. This takes form in the establishment of a committee providing oversight to Vote 1, the presidency. We believe this will be one of the most important rules to come before this House, as reports from the Parliamentary Budget Office indicate that large sums of public funds are allocated to Vote 1, which is currently not monitored or accounted for like is done to all other departments. This leaves amount of money unaccounted for, and it is our considered view that all members of the executive must be held accountable to the people of this country. Thank you very much.
FF plus. The dates.
Honourable Chairperson, colleagues, the rules in any institution is there to facilitate the process and to make sure that that process and that institution functions effectively. When we draft rules, one should always put yourself in the other side, on the other position. If you were on the other side of the argument, how would you look into those rules? Because that's the dynamics of politics, that there may be a day when those who currently are in government may become the opposition, and those in opposition may one day become the government. So rules should be drafted in such a manner that we act in the best interest of the institution to facilitate the processes of how we work. Now, most of the rules that we are dealing with today, and the Deputy Chief have dealt with them, are basic technical things in terms of the reality where we now have to accommodate hybrid sessions, virtual sessions, etc. And I don't think anybody disagrees with that. I think we all understand that, we all support that. It's not ideal. It's quite frustrating that Parliament do not function the way that we should function in terms of all members being in one place and argue and can debate. Some of the rule amendments that we are dealing with today, I think, make sense. I think it's to be accepted, and it makes sense that you do not use Parliament for a protest. In Parliament, you don't need placards and posters. In Parliament, you argue with words. And if you don't have words, posters are not going to assist you to try and get your position across. Use arguments and convince people with the words that you use. You don't need posters and protests to do that. However, Chairperson, it is unfortunate, and I think that the whole idea that we need interpellations, and I think we need to further explore that reality. Interpellations are small, very small mini debates. It's fascinating how you can use interpellations because it's two members that combined debate. One starts, the minister responds, another colleague interprets and brings some more debate. The minister responds. It's very lively kind of interactions between the executive and members of Parliament. And I think we should once again reconsider that going forward. I don't think the final word is being said with regard to interpellations. I think it's things that we need to explore further and that we should take on board. The last one I would like to say, Chairperson, if we are honest with one another, it's unthinkable that the vote of the president does not have an oversight committee. There's no reason why that should not be the case. The presidency, like any other branch of the executive, should also be in a position where oversight is being done. And I think we should once again also rethink that reality because it creates the wrong impression. It creates that we don't want oversight over the presidency. I don't think anybody agrees with that. And I think we should reconsider that. But for the rest, it's technical, and I don't think we should have a problem. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. ACDP.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, the ACDP has taken note of this report and the amended rules which relate to virtual and hybrid sittings. And whilst we fully support the need to physically meet and the need for committees as well as the National Assembly to physically meet, we do appreciate that there are challenges in this regard resulting in virtual and hybrid meetings. We also support the ban of all weapons, dangerous, threatening objects, articles, bringing those into chambers, as well as the amended rules relating to the conduct of parliamentary protection services. I think it's also very important to note that we as smaller growing parties have raised the issue about limited time and limited to put questions as well as many debates. And we appreciate that this is a matter which is receiving ongoing attention as well. The ACDP also supports the establishment of a portfolio committee on the presidency that would improve oversight over the presidency. We believe that this is very important and that recommendation of the Zondo report should be looked into as a matter of urgency. We also appreciate what other speakers have indicated about us supporting and protecting the independent panel's report. I think it's very important for us to bear in mind what the Constitutional Court set out in the EFF versus the Speaker of the National Assembly, where the court made it very clear that the fact that members of the Assembly assume office through nomination by political parties ought to have a limited influence on how they exercise the institutional power of the Assembly, where the interests of political parties are inconsistent with the Assembly's objectives. Now, the Assembly appointed that panel. The Assembly, it is its report, where the interests of political parties are inconsistent with the Assembly's objectives, members must, not may, must exercise the Assembly's power for the achievement of the Assembly's objectives. For example, members may not frustrate the realization of ensuring a government by the people of its attainment if its attainment would harm their political party. In other words, the interests of the National Assembly should be put ahead of narrow political party interests. And the court said if they were to do so, they'd be using the institutional power of the Assembly for a purpose other than the one for which the power was conferred, and this would be inconsistent with the Constitution. Hopefully, we will learn from this instruction, particularly next week when we vote on the independent panel report. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. UDM. ATM. Good. Thank you. NFP. AIC. COPE. PAC.
No declaration, Chair.
Yeah. Al Jamal.
No declaration, Chair.
Thank you. ANC.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. I rise to welcome and appreciate the work of the Rules Committee presented here, to thank the chairperson of the subcommittee on rules review, as well as the speaker in doing this work. We had quite a number of meetings, did very comprehensive work in the subcommittee, And we are satisfied that the matters that are being tabled here, ranging from the virtual meetings, issues of interpellation, oversight on the presidency, physical removal of members, and so on, have been considered very well in both committees. I must just make this point, firstly, to respond to Honorable Khwarube from the DA. She would have been asked in the very first subcommittee to come and present this interpellation proposal and indicating to that subcommittee, firstly, what are the gaps and why, in the first place, this issue would have been removed. She presented that very unconvincingly. The response and the agreement of the committee is that since the interpellations were removed, there have been more innovations that were intended to enhance accountability. And that includes your mini plenaries, and that even within mini plenaries, this issue of the mini debate is already happening. So the issue of lack of accountability is just in Afrikaans, sal ek sê, 'n verkiesingsfoefie wat hulle nou hier ingooi. So there's no point about that. On the issue of the oversight committee on the presidency, Honorable Singh from the IFP would have presented this matter. We were clear and said to them, tell us where the gaps are in terms of all the committees that are in existence that are not attending to this. We even went further to ask the budget office to give us those kind of items. And the next meeting will be dealing with whether there are gaps. So they can't be coming here and say the ANC is just voting them down. We bring into that committee our content as well as our numbers. We are unapologetic about the fact that we are a majority party here. We bring both. So I think it's important that we understand that. If there are gaps that would identify in the committees that are existing, we will debate and consider that committee. But as things stand, there's none of that. And we ask them to really place the evidence that they have that is going to lead us into that. You can't just come here and just make wishes that are not based on evidence, that are not based on facts and the journey that we're traveling. And I'm hoping that members will stop doing that. On the issue of the question reduced from 5 to 4, it was made very clear. This is in the interest of making sure that you spread the questions among a cluster of ministers. We've had examples here that in the 3 hours of questions, there are ministers who would come and leave without answering their questions because we would have concentrated on a few ministers. The 4 is meant. And so again, it's enhancing that accountability. Well, I can't respond much to the EFF. We miss them in both the subcommittee and the rules committee. So they're just opposition is an opposition that is clearly blind. On the issue about the vote for next week, just to indicate there's a date, Tuesday the 13th, there's a venue, Cape Town City Hall. The ANC is already there. Bring it on. We are ready with our content and our numbers. I thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections?
Please note the objections of the DA, House Chair.
Noted.
We object as AFF.
Noted.
Object. We object, Janji, too.
Any other objection? No further objections. The report is agreed to. The Secretary will read the third order.
Consideration of recommendation of candidates to fill 12 vacancies on South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC board.
The Honorable Manele.
Thank you, House Chair. Honorable House Chairperson, honorable members, ministers and deputy ministers, committee support staff, fellow South Africans. Honorable Chairperson, I rise to introduce this report of the Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies on the recommendations of 12 non-executive members of the board of the South African Broadcasting Corporation, the SABC, as the candidates for the new board, owing to the expiry of the board term on 15th October 2022. This is at the backdrop of a period in which the country reflects on GBV and femicide, with the need for the SABC to inform, educate, and entertain society. The SABC is governed by the Broadcasting Act, Act 4 of 1999. Section 13, subsection 1 of the Act states that the 12 non-executive members of the board must be appointed by the President on the advice of the National Assembly. The Portfolio Committee is therefore tasked with ensuring that nomination, shortlisting, qualification, verification, security vetting through the State Security Agency, interviewing, and therefore making recommendations to this August House. Honorable members, a letter dated 13th June 2022 was received from the Minister of Communication and Digital Technologies, one, informing the National Assembly about the impending expiry term of office of the SABC Board of Directors on 15 October 2022, and two, requesting the National Assembly to initiate the recruitment process in terms of Section 13 of the Broadcasting Act, Act 4 of 1999, to constitute the SABC Board. The referral to the committee was published on the ATC reports on the 30th June 2022 during the constituency period. Fellow South Africans, proactively the Portfolio Chairperson invoked the provisions of Rule 158 of the NA rules and therefore considered the referral and engaged the committee support staff to proceed with publishing an advert in the media calling for nomination of persons to be appointed to constitute the SABC board as detailed in the report. The committee constituted a subcommittee of 7 members proportional to representation of political parties to run with the processes and report to it. Honorable members, on the 8th of September 2022, the subcommittee met to consider in its criteria the skills, experience, and expertise required to constitute the SABC board and agreed to recommend 37 names for shortlisting out of the 120 names received, as explained in the detailed report, which the committee approved. The shortlisted candidates' interviews were conducted virtually on the 13th to 16th September 2022. Qualification, verification, and public comments processes were concluded in 2 weeks from the 8th of September 2022, and security vetting came in batches, with the last batch received only on the 21st November 2022. As stated in the committee report, during the interviews, 3 candidates, and during the security vetting process, 1 candidate withdrew from the process for various reasons. In line with its adopted program, the subcommittee on the 27th of September 2022 considered all public comments received on various candidates with the assistance of legal advice from Parliament Legal Services and decided not to proceed with recommending names without a security vetting outcome. Fellow South Africans, on the 24th November 2022, the subcommittee met and agreed to recommend names to the committee, which also met on the 24th November 2022 at a different time, and the committee agreed to the following recommendations for consideration by this August House. 1, that the following names, taking into account skills, expertise, experience, need for continuity and change, gender balance, and other demographics, be considered for appointment in the SABC board in line with Section 13 of the Broadcasting Act, Act 4 of 1999. 1, Dr. Rene Horn, Advocate Tsediso Tipanyane, Mr. Kadutselo Ramukuma, Prof. Franz Kruger, Ms. Nomvuiso Baki, Ms. Patiso Makopeni, Ms. Afael Makwanya, Ms. Magdalene Munsami, Ms. Riabezo Mutaung, Mr. David Maimela, Mr. Dinkwanyana Mohuba, Mr. Mpo Tsedu. 2, that in order of priority, Mr. Zolani Matthews, Ms. Palisa Kadi, and Mr. Quinton Green be considered as the reserve pool to be considered for appointment by the president in case of any eventuality, given the time it has taken to conclude the SABC board appointment process. Honorable members, before I sit down, let me make the following observations.
Thank you very
One,
much, Honorable Member.
Thank you. Thank you. The report is presented for consideration.
I will now recognize political parties wishing to make a declaration. The usual times apply. The DA.
Cadre deployment is an interesting exercise, but what it does for the ANC is it ensures there are those within an entity which will vote at the behest of the ANC for an issue which decision is to anyone else totally and irrevocably counterintuitive. Yet loyalty to the political party, it seems, trumps all. And that is how we ended up with the Zondo Commission, and that is how in 10 years' time we will read about Zondo, the sequel, on the front pages. Now, I was put on this committee some 3 months ago, and 2 weeks later, I was on the SABC board subcommittee, received 120 CVs 1 day later, and shortlisting of 37 was done the following morning before caucus and signed off that afternoon. The full interviews began 4 days later. It was rushed through despite the fact that this committee had known for 5 years the date on which the board term would end. On the 26th of September, we were made aware of the fact that there was going to be an inevitable delay in vetting. So the SABC has been left without a board for nearly 2 months with no oversight over the CEO, who apparently headed off to Qatar to watch the football. This was the same CEO who just weeks ago bragged to this committee how he'd brought the losses down to 201 million. Well, while he was focusing on his favorite football team, he scored an own goal as the losses projection suddenly trebled to a massive 608 million. Perhaps in this case, he should have taken his eye off the football and kept it on the job he's paid a ransom to do. Astonishingly, during COVID-19, SABC radio and television had literally a captive audience, yet people switched off en masse. Despite ridding the SABC of nearly 700 staff, payments to employees increased to 2.2 billion. The SABC axed them and then promptly started advertising for 400 new staff. However, nothing they did was as egregious as the payback for a news editor refusing a political directive. She would not give in to the order to film the president at a meeting instead of real news, and was suddenly up on charges. Despite a finding that she should merely have been given a warning, she was booted out and promptly replaced by a more accommodating employee. Well, one of the great achievements of the DA has been the putting of that self-same person, Patiswe Magopane, with her encyclopedic knowledge of all that is broadcasting on the SABC board. Today, a great wrong has been righted. Negotiating one's way through the minefield that is a parliamentary portfolio committee is always an interesting business, and one has to accept that while expertise should have been at the top of the must-have register, the ANC will predictably resort to bean counting in terms of gender, race, and age. So much experience was lost. We agreed that former board member Dr. Rene Horn should return, which provides continuity. There is enormous talent being introduced, such as advocate Tseliso Tipanyane, an expert on the Constitution, and former journalist Professor Franz Kruger. Also high on my list were Katutselo Ramakumba, an internal audit specialist, and then there was Mpho Tsedu, formerly a journalist of the SABC. Sadly, it wasn't in his CV that he this year became the current minister's advisor. Only found that out last night, so potential for a huge conflict of interest there. Other board members will continue with specific and much needed skills, such as arts expert Efeli Makwanya and Rerobetsu Mwakwang, former competition commissioner analyst. Compromise candidates were ANC favorite and former board member David Maimela and Magdalene Musami, formerly ANC, then EFF MP, and now seemingly back with the ANC. It's interesting that there were a number of former board members and other candidates who didn't make the cut, but of concern is former board member Dinkwanyana Mahube, put forward both by the ANC and EFF, despite enormous issues in terms of a doctorate degree that wasn't and is seemingly enforced departure from a Limpopo university. While he was found guilty, the matter is on appeal, and my questions as to what would be the process should his appeal fail fell on deaf ears. On the whole, the board has what it takes and a steely determination to fix what is patently broken. Hopefully they'll pull the CEO back from Qatar. Certainly someone has to be pinned down at the very least for the SABC's 2.8 billion rand in irregular, fruitless and wasteful expenditure. The AG says there's no sign of any accountability at all. This board has no option but to turn things around in reality and not just in vague hot air claims before our committee. The Democratic Alliance supports the appointment of this SABC board. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Member. FF plus.
Chairperson.
You mean EFF, Chair?
Chairperson.
Yes.
EFF.
Yeah, please, it's EFF, not
EFF.
this us about. Thank you very much, House Chairperson. One of the most unfortunate failures of the governing party is the collapse of the SABC. The SABC, by its design and mandate, is one of the pillars of our democracy. It is not democracy if it does not have freedom of expression, content, and information in a dependable and transparent manner. We are told our constitution is one of the greatest in the world because...
Order, honorable members. Sorry, can continue, honorable member.
Are you the one who's disrupting me?
Continue, honorable member.
We are told our constitution is one of the greatest in the world because it guarantees everyone the right to access to information, education, language, and culture. But most important, the Bill of Rights guarantees everyone the right to freedom of expression, which includes freedom of the press and other media. It is here that the SABC is supposed to be a cornerstone of our democracy. However, we know the political interference caused the ANC to fail, as the SABC to fail. The failure to fund the SABC was deliberate, intended to suppress the only true and independent voice. The collapse of the SABC undermines a huge potential to industrial opportunity in the telecommunications space and will only benefit the establishments and their companies. We have seen boards come and go with very little change because they get appointed with misguided political agendas. We hope that this board will be different and it will breathe new life into the SABC and that we will never have an SABC that is begging to survive. We should never find the SABC failing to spend 800 million worth of content. And lastly, we hope this board has the willingness to collect what is due to the SABC for broadcasting SABC content on multi-choice. The EFF supports this report. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, honorable member. IFP.
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. A central tenet of the South African Broadcasting Corporation Charter is that...
Honorable members. Order, honorable members. IFP, please continue.
A central tenet of the South African Broadcasting Corporation Charter is that it enjoys freedom of expression and journalistic, creative, and programming independence. The SABC board controls the affairs of the entity and is mandated explicitly to protect the above freedom and independence, therefore. The SABC board carries a heavily and critically important load of responsibility. Thus, for the entity to function as a high-performing, financially sustainable, digitized national public broadcaster that provides compelling, informative, educational, and entertaining content via all platforms. It needs to be managed by a board that consists of individuals that have the necessary skills demanded to do so, because we are tired of bailouts. Following a rigorous process of screening and interviewing candidates, The IFP is in full agreement with the 12 names that were submitted by the committee. I also want to take this opportunity to commend the committee for following a transparent screening and interviewing process, which included the consideration of factors such as gender equality, youth representation, and the skills demand. A further noteworthy point is our pledge that the current board that will be appointed should not be faced with any political interference, as the board will be left to do what they deem fit for the SABC. One of the successful 12 candidates that the IFP highly recommended was the former Chief Executive Officer of the National Youth Development Agency, Mr. Katutelo Ramukumba, who currently works as the Chief Financial Officer for the University of South Africa. However, the 12 chosen candidates all had excellent interviews, which evidenced by the fact that their recommendations were agreed to all by all political parties present. The IFP accepts the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. FF Plus.
Thank you, House Chairperson. House Chairperson, the public broadcaster has been destroyed by the ANC government. En hy is voorsitter vir al die beleid van kaderontplooiing, het die openbare uitsaaier tot op sy knieë gedryf. Die SABC se finansiële posisie is vernietig deur swak bestuur en die journalistieke integriteit van die openbare uitsaaier is geweldig aangetas oor die afgelope paar jaar. Die nuwe raad sal 'n geweldige groot taak hê om die finansiële posisie en die geloofwaardigheid te herstel deur effektiewe oorsig. Die VF+ ondersteun die aanstelling van hierdie kandidate en ondersteun die verslag. Ek dank u.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. ACDP.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, the ACDP has taken note of this report, recommending candidates to fill the 12 vacancies on the SABC board. Now, the SABC, as we know, as a public broadcaster, plays a key role in strengthening democracy in the country, providing information and entertainment to the public. The ACDP participated in the previous ad hoc committee on the SABC, the inquiry into the fitness to hold office of that board at that time. And many members will remember in 2017 that report found serious mismanagement, political interference, and unlawful appointments at the SABC. And this was at the height of state capture. We know a lot of that information and evidence was further ventilated by the Zonda reports. But let us just remember that finding came at a great cost. One of the SABC 8 journalists, Suna Fenta, 33-year-old, died as a result of the trauma that she experienced at that time, a 33-year-old journalist. So let us bear in mind that those that have gone ahead of us to prepare the way. And we are grateful that the SABC has been on a relative path of recovery since those days. The firing, however, of the former head of news and veteran journalist, Patiswa Magopeni, was a setback to this renewal process. And during her time of head of news, she created an environment that encouraged and supported editorial freedom. And it was disgraceful that she was fired when the panel suggested merely a warning. And we are pleased that during her time, she created that environment where journalists and editors could do their work professionally, debate issues openly, free from any political interference. And so we are very pleased that she has been nominated to this board, and we support the nominations, the appointments of the new SABC board. It faces many challenges, particularly regarding declining revenues, increased costs of running the public broadcaster, and we wish them everything of the best in their endeavors to turn the SABC around. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. UDM. ATM. Good. Yep. NFP. AIC. Cope.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I confirm COPE's support for the appointment of all the recommended candidates. Indeed, the process ought to have been finalized a very long time ago, but known and of course numerous disagreements delayed the final appointment. That which one is correct to refer to as the as the mandated management, that is the management mandated by the owners of SABC, namely all South Africans, has not existed for some time. As a sequel to that, the bureaucracy was in control. Owners of SABC, namely South Africans, whom we represent here, must learn from history, which I cannot go into because it is very long. If there is no board, the bureaucracy takes control. Hence, theft, corruption, ill-treatment of both blue and junior workers, although they perform extra work, no living wages, reduction of workers, staff, and yet taking other workers. For example, workers are taken as presenters to work on radio and TV stations, for example, SABC 404, then 405, then SAFM, etc. That's tripling, or even making sure that their salaries go beyond those of the ordinary persons. Now that is wrong. And I hope that the board here will be able to look into that. But even further, the board must ensure that the SABC does not only concentrate on a particular political direction. It looks at that which is supposed to be looked into by the entire South Africa. The board must look into a number of other things. It must be a strong board, otherwise history will repeat itself, like I said. I want to say, remember, persons such as Kaudi Mutwening, who, for instance, in the past, as the COO, would give himself more than 30 million rand just as bonus. And the same thing happened with the others that followed him. And I therefore am saying, yes, let's agree that this board must come in and give them a hand, ensure that they work as much as it is possible, but say to them, please deliver. They must deliver. Otherwise, we will be angry with them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. AC.
Chair, the PAC support the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nonso. Al Jama.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Honorable House Chair, the ANC has done well in turning around
Honorable
the
members.
SABC. The winds of change on the ground can be seen where it counts. Producers are doing the country proud. The ANC have now appointed a new board to give leadership to take broadcasting to a new level. We hope other national broadcasters will get the same space to reach impartial heights. The SABC must not push the governing party and the official opposition. The African Peer Review Network mechanism has warned that a two-party state is a threat to our democracy. At that time, there was no EFF. So now you must say a three-party state is a threat to our democracy. The SABC must promote diversity and a multi-party country, giving space to independent candidates. Al-Jamaa, congratulations to 12 board members and wish them well. The board must not promote white values, but African values, and get whites to embrace African values. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. ANC.
Thanks, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, fellow South Africans. I rise on behalf of the ANC to support the report on Portfolio Committee on Communication and Digital Technologies on filling the 12 board vacancies for the South African Broadcasting Corporation. The African National Congress applaud the subcommittee and the Portfolio Committee led by Honorable Maneli for successfully concluding this process despite the frustration that has been expressed by members of the public about delays in vetting and verification of candidates. While it might have taken some time, we believe that qualification, verification, state security clearance, and public participation were all essential prerequisites to ensure legitimacy of this process. It is against this background that the following names have been supported: Dr. Rene Horn, Advocate Tsidiso Tsipanyane, Katutselo Ramkumba, Franz Kruger Nombuiso Baki, Patiswa Makubeni, Ms. Afleni Makwanya, Magdalene Monsami, Rabets Mutaun, David Maimela, Mr. Dinkwanyana Muhuba, and Mr. Mpotse to serve on the SABC board. We also welcome the decision of the subcommittee to further select Zolani Matthews, Palesa Kadi, and Mr. Quinton Green to serve as reserve pool in the event of withdrawal of any proposed 12 candidates. Honorable members, our committee has been entrusted with a mammoth task to know that the SABC is still in the process of implementing its turnaround strategy. The journey to recovery for the SABC began in 2016 when the National Assembly ad hoc committee inquiry into fitness of the SAB board, which revealed the following amongst others: instability, dysfunctional, political interference, and impeded the board ability to hold SABC executive accountable. The Broadcasting Act was disregarded as a principal act governing the affairs of the public broadcaster. The SAB group incurred expenditure and contravention of supply chain management. All things stands, the SAB has reported their overall revenue in below budget by $1 billion. The entity's underperforming advertising revenue is underpinned by declining audience and delays in the billing of Telkom One channel carrier fees. Poor license fee collections have also contributed to the net loss position to 238 critical positions remain vacant. While the picture looks gloomy, it is worth mentioning that there are great strides and promising interventions that are in the pipeline for the SABC. The ANC welcome progressive moves to use over-the-top platforms. We are happy that SABC has officially joined the streaming club with giants such as Apple TV, Amazon Prime, Netflix, Showmax, and Disney+. The SABC Plus streaming platform was launched on the 17th November and is accessible via internet as a website. It currently offers free-to-air channels SABC 1, 2, and 3, the SAB Sports Channel and Station 24-hour channel, and its 19 radio stations. Through this platform, the corporation will be able to generate some revenue. We also call for the finalization of the analog switch-off process. It will also help the SABC to cut some of signal distribution costs while freeing up spectrum and allowing for more channels, which will foster more jobs and more compelling content to the entire viewers at home. The ANC is also pleased that Cabinet has approved the submission of Parliament of SABC Bill for 22 for processing. The bill was published for public comment in June 2021. The bill proposes, amongst other changes, streamlining of the board, which will strengthen its responsibility and accountability. It also proposes reform in SABC funding and model and TV licensing. As I conclude, House Chairperson, as the ANC would also like to convey our heartfelt condolences to the family of Pearl Shongwe, who passed away last month. The SABC and broadcasting family have lost one of its jewels. We have lost one of our most extraordinary talents. May her soul rest in peace. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Are there any objections to the recommendation of the committee that Dr. Rene Horn, Advocate Tsidiso Tsipanyane, Mr. Khutacho Ramukumba, Professor Franz Kriel, Ms. Nomvuiso Bache, Ms. Patiswa Mahopeni, Ms. Aifele Makwanya, Ms. Magdalene Munsami, Ms. Arabe Tsimotaung, Mr. David Maimela, Mr. Dinkwanyane Muhuba, and Mr. Mpotsedu, including additional members of Mr. Zolani Matthews, Ms. Pali Sakadi, and Ms. Quentin Green, be recommended for appointment on South African Broadcasting Corporation Board. No objections agreed to. Dr. Reinhold, Advocate Sidiso Chipanyane, Mr. Khatuchalo Ramukumba, Professor Franz Krier, Ms. Nomvuyiso Pake, Ms. Patiswa Makopeni, Ms. Aifele Makwanya, Ms. Magdalene Munsami, Ms. Arabetsu Mutau, Mr. David Maimela, Mr. Dinkwanyana Mohuba, and Mr. Mpotsedu are therefore recommended for appointment to the board of the South African Broadcasting Corporation. The names will be forwarded to the president for consideration for appointment. The fourth order, please.
Consideration of request for approval by Parliament of South Africa's membership of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank in terms of Section 231, subsection 2 of the Constitution, 1996.
The Honorable MJ Swanganye.
Thank you, Chairperson, Ministers, honorable members. We hereby present the report of the Standing Committee Finance to the National Assembly to approve South Africa to join the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank. On the 3rd of December 2015, South African government, through the Minister of Finance, signed the agreement to establish the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank. Therefore, South Africa becoming a prospective founding member. South Africa is a prospective member also as a result that geographically, it is not in the Asian continent. However, it should be noted that South Africa is not the only African country which is a member of this bank. There are 12 other countries in Africa which are members of the bank. What is before us, Chairperson, is that we have got a deadline to meet as a country, which is the 31st of December 2022, whereby by that date, we should have ratified the agreement. Of course, there are cost implications to ratifying this agreement. South Africa or the South African government will have to make a capital contribution of $1 million, which will be paid in 5 equal installments. Are there benefits for joining this bank? Yes, South Africa will be able to borrow from the bank. The bank can invest in any member with a ceiling of such an investment as a share of a total bank, that is 15% to non-regional, which translate into $15 billion at the current value. The bank has distinguished itself as a leader in the green infrastructure investment. And through this kind of an agreement, South Africa will also be able to strengthen the South-to-South cooperation with the Asian region, which is one of the fastest growing region economically. The committee recommends that Parliament approve the decision by government to join the bank as a non-regional member through the ratification of the Articles of Agreement of the AIIB. Chairperson, I move for the adoption of the report. Nakens. Inko.
Thank you very much, honourable member. I will now recognize political parties wishing to make a declaration. The usual times apply. The DA.
Thank you, Chairperson. The Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank was originally formed in December 2015, led by China. South Africa was a prospective founding member with an allocation of 5,906 shares at $100,000 each and 600 bonus shares. Our total contribution was meant to be 9.3 billion rand. At that time, Cabinet approved the take-up of a so-called symbolic 10% of the allocation of 930 million. There was no money to fund this, and South Africa missed 4 deadlines to ratify the agreement. There is one last deadline on the 31st of December this year to become a founding member and receive the 600 bonus shares. The current proposal is for the minimal prescription of 50 shares at 86 million in total. That's $1 million initially, and then another 4 million callable. The problem is that we still can't afford it, and government wants to join to borrow more money. In his mid-year budget speech, the minister mentioned trade-offs that need to be made. Essentially, the choices that government must make when it spends the people's money. The trade-offs he chose did not benefit vulnerable and hungry South Africans. Instead of exercising the tough love that he had promised for the state-owned enterprises, he chose to bail out Denel, Transnet, and Sunrail with 30 billion rand and will transfer at least 200 billion rand of Eskom's debt onto the national balance sheet. National debt will exceed 5 trillion rand next year, and interest payments will be the largest single expenditure item, crowding out education, healthcare, police service, and soon social grant payments. The minister cannot guarantee that the social relief of distress grant will continue to support millions of vulnerable South Africans, let alone a basic income grant, because he's made the wrong choices. Although the minister has now joined the DA in his concern about the cost of living crisis, he did that in the context of criticizing the DA for wanting to expand the zero VAT rated basket of food, while at the same time raising our concern over the amount of interest on loans that government must pay. He presented these as mutually exclusive when they are not. Government does not need to raise tax or even maintain it at current levels to meet interest payments. If our economy grows, tax revenue rises, and that generates the additional income that government now desperately needs. With projections that South Africa's economy will grow at less than 1% next year, amongst the slowest in Africa, a grey listing looming in February, and economic fallout over Phala, it is clear why government wants access to more loans. With the ANC in terminal decline, government does not believe that it can put our economy onto the path to growth that will lift our people out of poverty. It is not possible to borrow an economy into growth. Even if borrowed money is spent on building infrastructure, it cannot happen in isolation. We need coherent economic policy that places government where it should be, as a facilitator for economic growth, and not as an incapable and corrupt impediment at the center of our economy. The DA will soon launch our new economic policy that sets out how we will build an enterprising economy that will halve unemployment before the end of this decade. At a time when 81% of South African households can't afford to put enough food on the table, the minister chooses to look the other way and spend the money on bailouts for buddies, instead of removing VAT and thus lowering the price of bone-in chicken, beef, tinned beans, wheat flour, margarine, peanut butter, tea, coffee, baby food, and soup powder. He also chooses bailouts instead of lowering the fuel levy to reduce the cost of transport that drives the price of all food. In all of our interactions with the IMF, the World Bank, foreign missions, the international banking sector, and foreign investors, the DA has never hesitated in our conviction that South Africa has enormous potential. We have a young population, a vibrant informal economy, an untapped entrepreneurial spirit, just waiting for government to do its job and get out of the way of the success. South Africa is not a poor country. Our people are poor because government has mismanaged our economy for too long. Cadre deployment has brought our public service to the brink of collapse, and the wrong model for BEE has distorted our economy by making business transactions more expensive to pay for the unproductive rent seekers that it introduced. It's Christmas time, Minister, and South Africans are going hungry. You can relieve the cost of living crisis if you make the right choices and rather spend this 86 million rand wisely. The DA does not support joining the bank. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Thank you. EFF. Thank you. Honorable members. Honorable members, you know, when we were dealing with the second order on the rules, one was thinking, or if presiding officers were to be given powers to allow them to order those members who usually shout at each other to sit together as a way of trying to lower the noise levels in the house. I would go to an extent of naming them, those that must sit together. Thank you, honorable members. You can continue, Honorable Mautwe.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Chair, the EFF supports the Standing Committee on Finance report to endorse the cabinet decision to join the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank led by China, a decision that was taken earlier in 2015. We've noted the objections from some of the committee members, which are informed by a long-held practice that any global initiative that is not part and parcel of neo-colonial administration management is viewed with hatred. We know that there are deliberate and coordinated efforts to undermine anything that is not led by the United States, Britain, France, or other formal colonizers. We know, House Chair, that the reasons for affordability are just side remarks to give legitimacy to a new colonial imperialist agenda. Even the comment on BRICS is not genuine, because if it were, we would have seen the same energy and condemnation for the reckless World Bank and IMF loans that will lead South Africa into a debt trap for future generations. The reality, House Chair, is that countries that are members of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, except for the racist apartheid Israel, oppressing and killing the people of Palestine, have not colonized anyone. In fact, their infrastructure investment contributions in their own countries and here in Africa have led to the eradication of poverty and far-reaching economic transformation, and China is a significant example. House Chair, as things stands today, a third of Africa's power grids and infrastructure have been financed and constructed by Chinese state-owned companies. And this is not part of neo-colonialism. This is just one of many investments they have made in Africa. We must, as African countries, Egypt, Ghana, Ethiopia, Liberia, Tunisia, Rwanda, and others, come together and develop a clear, coordinated, and comprehensive agreement of how to get maximum benefits from our collective membership. But more importantly, House Chair and members of Parliament, we must maximize the benefits of the bank's relationship with other financial institutions capable of large-scale projects through a build, operate, transfer model to ensure that a lack of capacity and experience is not a hindrance. The EFF supports the report. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Dan Mautwe.
IFP.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. As independent nations, our stability depends on cooperation, mutual support with other countries through formal structures, treaties, and agreements. It is through this partnership that we sometimes not only realize our potential, but also can extend helping hand to each other when needed. The Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank invites us to exist on the same platform that promotes the joint development of all our countries, as well as people's joint enjoyment of the development fruits of their countries. Its invitation to be a member calls for us to be part of the community, not merely as a member, but a founding member. As the IFP, we know that this comes against the background of our country being swamped with debt, lack of active job opportunities, and looming grey list status. Our future is hanging in the balance, and we need to build sustainable relationships. However, we cannot blindly accept the invitation to be a member of this bank without acknowledging our own big infrastructure deficit and the need to finance it. Even with this need, we can't afford any more debt. as if we were to be part of this infrastructure bank, we need to bear in mind that the premise of the bank is to offer money through their lending practice to address the infrastructure gap in countries like ourselves. The acceptance of membership will place us in a close proximity to allow for greater access to bank lending opportunities. Therefore, we need to be extra caution and intentional when it comes to taking money from this bank, if at all. We will need to steer away from solely accepting capital on the basis that we are being offered. Instead, there must be a clear intent goal for it. Money borrowed should be used to address the exact need it's been taken for. Our country and more so our leaders should exercise discipline to avoid catapulting us into further financial woes through their proven bad financial management. We need to start generating a more sustainable and stable model of growth instead of falling into a culture of debt. Our decision to be a member of the bank should be to support the region's development goals and not to exploit our service or to expose ourselves. The IFP support the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. FF plus.
Thank you, House Chairperson. House Chairperson, the benefits of this agreement and membership of this bank are quite thin. From the interactions with National Treasury during the committee meeting, it seemed as though National Treasury is also quite apathetic about this agreement and can't really tell us what the real benefits are. Joining this bank will not be to the real benefit of South Africans out there, and this is once again an example of wrong priorities and wrong choices, where 86 million rand could be spent much better. The choice is being made to do this, and this will not really solve our infrastructure problems. This is ill-considered and will not serve the interests of South Africans out there, and that is why the Freedom Front Plus does not support this agreement nor the report. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. ACDP.
Honorable House Chairperson, as we consider this recommendation, the ACDP is aware that the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank is a multilateral development bank whose mission is financing the infrastructure for tomorrow with sustainability at its core. The ACDP also notes that the bank began operations in Beijing in January 2016 and has now grown to 104 approved members worldwide. It is capitalized at $100 billion and has a AAA rating by major international credit rating agencies. What is interesting is that the United States failed to convince many of its allies not to join the bank, with the exception of Japan, Germany, the United Kingdom, South Korea, Australia, France, Italy, Saudi Arabia, Spain, United Arab Emirates, Netherlands, Canada, Poland, Israel, New Zealand are all members. It would appear that the purpose of the bank is finding resonance with these members. And that purpose is to foster sustainable economic development, create wealth, and improve infrastructure connectivity by investing in infrastructure and other productive sectors. And secondly, promoting regional cooperation and partnership in addressing development challenges by working in close collaboration with other multilateral and bilateral development institutions. Now, despite being a founding member, South Africa has been a reluctant participant in the bank, having failed to ratify its articles of agreement for several years. It has also whittled down its initial proposed shareholding by more than half since 2015, and we note that an amount of $1 million or 17 million rand would need to be paid within 30 days after ratification by Parliament, with the outstanding 4 million being callable. The ACDP is aware that our debt to GDP is way too high and that the servicing of our debt is beginning to crowd out key service delivery budget items. In the light of our key economic challenges, we would prefer not to borrow, or certainly to drastically reduce our borrowing. However, the ACDP realizes that we need to be practical, and so with some reservations, the ACDP supports the recommendation. I thank you.
Thank you very much, honorable member. UDM. ATM. Good. Thank you. NFP. AIC.
No declaration, Honorable Chair.
Yep. Pope. Thank you, honorable member. PAC.
PAC support this report, Chair.
Thank you very much. Al-Jama.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Honorable House Chair, we support the report. We are very concerned about illicit financial flows. And as you know, that at the moment, 50% of our GDP is lost through illicit financial flows. But otherwise, Al-Jama supports the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. ANC.
Thank you, House Chair. Pass dumelang ka ditulo ka lona ka ho fapafapana. Yeah. South Africa's participation in the AIIB was intended to strengthen economic relationship in the Asian region and towards demonstrating solidarity with the region's development aspiration under South-South cooperation. These are also part of the fruits of being a BRICS member. As a non-regional member, South Africa will be able to borrow from the AIIB. The articles of agreement authorize the bank to invest in any member, that is both regional and non-regional, with a ceiling of such investment, 15% of non-regional, 15 billion US dollar at current level. South Africa has a low capital subscription of 1 million US dollar. The AIIB is distinguishing itself as leader in green infrastructure investment, 50% of its portfolio funding green projects in member countries. From other multilateral development banks, MDBs, South Africa will benefit through technical assistance and financing of its clean energy transition program. The Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank was originally formed by 21 Asian countries led by China. The bank's articles of agreement were signed on 25 December 2015 by 57 countries, including South Africa as a prospective founding member. To date, AIIB has 93 members, 47 regional members and 46 non-regional members. Other African countries are Algeria, Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, Egypt, Ethiopia, Ghana, Guinea, Liberia, Morocco, Rwanda, Sudan, and Tunisia. South Africa, through the Minister of Finance, signed the agreement to establish the AIIB on 3rd December 2015, thus becoming a prospective founding member. However, South Africa has not acceded to full membership to the bank. South Africa has missed 4 deadlines to ratify the agreement. The National Treasury and the Ministry of Finance were not able to finalize this matter given the challenge of the changing economic environment and
Right.
No, it's not right, Honorable Malfani.
What is it?
Honorable Malfani, please mute.
Okay.
ICT, could you please help him? Please continue, Honorable Member.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I said I'm going to repeat. However, South Africa has not acceded to full membership to the bank. South Africa has missed 4 deadlines to ratify the agreement. The National Treasury and Ministry of Finance were not able to finalize this matter given the challenge of the changing economic environment and reconsiderations on the shareholding that South Africa to take up at the AIIB. Cabinet endorsement was necessary in respect of the proposed revised shareholding. In September, Cabinet endorsed the decision for South Africa to join the AIIB with a paid capital of USD 1 million for 50 shares. As a non-regional founding member, South Africa will therefore receive an additional 600 shares after ratification of membership. This is a special arrangement for founding members. As a founding member, South Africa will receive an additional 600 shares and the total South African shareholding will be 0.19%. The AIB Board of Directors have taken a decision that the minimum share subscription of the country shall be 50 shares, having a nominal value of $5 million US. This equates to a paid-in capital contribution of $1 million US payable to the bank in 5 equal installments. National Treasury recommended this option to Cabinet since it will put less financial burden to the country. To retain status of founding member, the National Treasury will have to pay the entire amount by 31st December 2022. The National Treasury has consulted extensively with the Departments of Justice and Constitutional Development and International Relations and Cooperation on South Africa's ratification of the Articles of Agreement of the AIIB. The legal opinions provided by the departments is that the Articles of Association is not in contravention of domestic and international law. The Standing Committee of Finance approved the Cabinet decision of South Africa to join as a non-regional member through ratification of the Article of Agreement of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. The committee approved the minimum subscription of South Africa could subscribe to, namely 50 shares with a nominal value of $5 million US and of which the $1 million US with a rent equivalent of 16.4 million will be payable within 30 days after ratification by Parliament, and the committee endorsed 31st December 2022 as a final deadline set by the board of AIB for South Africa to rectify the Articles of Agreement. With regards to the position of the opposition, the view and concern that National Treasury is asking for more money from taxpayers, even though debts in South Africa was spiraling and economic conditions are not favorable for South African citizens, is misplaced. Questioning the benefit of the membership and the importance of South Africa being a founding member really demonstrates a lack of comprehension of South Africa's strategy when it comes to financing infrastructure. Such parties want the National Treasury to indebt themselves to South African banks at a commercial rate, whereas with an Asian investment bank, we have concessional loans. For that, I'm saying ANC supports the ratification of membership of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any objections to the approval of the South African membership of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank as it appears on the order paper?
House Chair, please note the objection of the DA.
Noted.
House Chairperson, please note the objection of the FF+.
Noted. With those objections, the report is agreed to. The last item on the order paper is farewell speeches. The Honorable, the Deputy Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chairperson.
Honorable House Chairperson, on the 2nd of January 2022, we woke up to the devastating news of our parliament being ravaged by fire. Despite this setback, members of parliament were able to do and execute their constitutional mandate, which is to pass bills and also to hold the executive to account. Honorable House Chairperson, I want to thank all honorable members of this House for their good behavior throughout the year. And also to thank them for not compromising the work of Parliament, even though they don't have offices within the parliamentary precinct, but committee meetings, portfolio committee meetings continues to take place under the circumstances. Thank you very much, honorable members, for availing yourselves to do what is constitutionally mandated to you. Honorable House Chairperson, I want to thank the Chief Whips Forum, which is a consultative forum, for the good working relationship that we always have. We consult each other on matters of the House. We process the work of the House, and to thank them again for making sure that what we agreed upon in the Chief Whips Forum is then agreed to in the National Assembly Programming Committee. Let me also thank the Speaker of the National Assembly and her office for always giving support to all of us as the Chief Whips Forum, leaders of parties, and also as members of Parliament. We really appreciate that. Let me thank the Secretary to Parliament and the Secretary to the National Assembly for always supporting us as members of Parliament when doing our work. Let me not forget our caucus members who are our backbones, who support us behind the scene, support us and making sure that we excelled as members of Parliament. Let me not forget the parliamentary staff members and the parliamentary protection services for making sure that the business of the House is not disrupted. So, honorable members, as we are going now home for the festive seasons, let's make sure that we spend time with our families, because we are always away from home, away from them. And you know what? South Africans sometimes don't understand how we operate in Parliament. They think that by sitting on the opposite sides and belonging to being members of our different political parties, we are enemies. But in the actual fact, we are colleagues more than anything else. And we spend more time together than we do with our members. So farewell. Lastly, let me thank the Chief Whip, our Chief Whip of the majority party, for steering the ship into the right direction throughout the year. Lastly, honorable members, as you enjoy your Christmas, please be safe with your families and make sure that you come back next year, next year, January or February, in one piece. Honorable members, may our good Lord be with those who lost their loved ones and those who still have, who are still looking for their loved ones after the devastating floods in KZN and other parts of the country. May our good Lord be with you all during the festive season. Thank you very much, Honorable Host.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chief Whip
of the majority party. I now invite the Honorable, the Chief Whip of the opposition. May I just remind all of us that we have 2 minutes. Thank you.
I could not agree more, Speaker, with the Deputy Chief Whip that regardless of which political parties we represent here, we are not enemies, but we're opponents, and we must always remember that. We began this year with a devastating fire of our parliament, and I think regardless of who you are, if you're a member of this house, that was indeed a sad day for all of us. The year has been underscored by our efforts to rebuild not only the building of parliament, but also our institution. And that work is far from being over. We have plenty of work to do when we get back from our December break. We must find an alternative venue for parliament. We must make sure that not a single cent of the money for the rebuilding of parliament is misspent. And we must continue to make sure that we take our role of representing South Africans seriously. Honorable Hope Papu, can you just give a person a chance? Please. However, for now, Honorable Papu, for now, let us go spend our much needed time with our families and our loved ones. They make great sacrifices of sharing us with our work during the course of the year. And thank you to my colleagues from across the various political parties. Thank you for endeavoring to work together, even though the tough got going and the going got tough and tense words were exchanged. Thank you to the presiding officers who have often presided over difficult sessions of this house. And a massive thank you to the parliamentary staff who make the work that we do here possible. Siyabulela for your dedication to the country. And lastly, Ndibulela, my very own caucus, the official opposition of this house, for your support and your commitment to your country. To all MPs, anga uThixo anganombathisa ngengubo yothando nemvisiswano kule festive season.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chief Whip of the opposition. Thank you. Honorable members, the next speaker will be the Honorable Mkalipi of the EFF. Honorable members, I know we're going on holiday, but please let's tone it down. Okay.
Thank you very much, Speaker. The year 2020 will go down in history as the year that began with a clear sign that our ancestors agreed that we must move Parliament to Pretoria. It is unfortunate that the ANC is insisting on spending billions on rebuilding what should have been left alone as a symbol of colonialism and apartheid. The year 2020 comes to an end when the poor and working class are facing difficult times. Abantu basahlala emaholweni eKZN after April floods. The ruling party continues to fail them. Instead, people are obsessed with protecting a president who chooses to keep money in his sofas and mattresses instead of paying workers in Ilutuli House. This is yet another year in which our people are unable to explain why this parliament is known as People's Parliament. Our people don't have land, they don't have economy, they don't have free basic services. The municipalities have collapsed. There are no jobs and they are in a tough times. We want to wish all South Africans, and members of diaspora safe and peaceful festivities as we continue to fight for total economic emancipation. To the EFF Grand Forces out there, we want to wish you safe and peaceful holidays. We want to plead with everyone not to drink and drive. We must all stand up against gender-based violence, as we know it is very tough in our communities. Lastly, We want to plead with everyone that we must share the little we have with those that don't have. We should not allow our neighbors to go hungry when we are enjoying ourselves and we can share. Farewell to colleagues in Parliament. Until next year, we must all come back energized because we must remove the constitutional delinquent who keep dollars under the mattress. Thank you, Speaker.
I thank you, Honorable Kalipi. I now invite the Honorable N. Singh. Order. Honorable Singh.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it's quite strange that we are bidding farewell to each other today for 2022 when we are going to be meeting next week, but circumstances have caused that to happen. Notwithstanding that, on behalf of our leader in Parliament, the Honorable Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, and the entire IFP Parliamentary Caucus, I want to thank all the presiding officers, our colleagues in Parliament, our support staff, those that...
Honorable Celeste Mutsipe, please mute. You may proceed, Honorable Singh. Honorable Singh, you may proceed. Honorable Singh is gone.
No, I'm there. I was muted by Parliament. Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I'll need some injury time because I just want to start where I left off. On behalf of our leader in Parliament, Honorable Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, and the entire IFP caucus, I want to thank everybody for the work in ensuring that we as an institution conducted our business and delivered upon our core mandate relatively reasonably in fulfilling the challenging and trying challenges that we had to go through. It is a time when we remember all our colleagues who have passed on, and also remember the families and the colleagues of those who may have passed on under tragic circumstances in the floods, in mudslides, in horrific accidents that took place during the country. I think one of the highlights for the IFP this year, Honorable Speaker, was the report that was tabled and debated last week by the ad hoc committee on the floods that took place. I think if we as Parliament, as a collective, can operate and produce those kinds of unbiased, independent, factual reports, I think it will go a long way in serving the citizens of this country better. During our parliamentary business in meeting targets, conducting oversight, concluding and presenting reports for declaration and debates on topics of national importance, it is always easy to lose sight of the most crucial element in any organization, and that is the person, the people, us, you and me, as individuals with hearts, minds, and feelings. We say goodbye to 2022, but anticipate a challenging 2023 parliamentary year ahead of us. Many of us will not stop working during this period, but I urge all of us to spend some time with our loved ones and recharge for the new year. Our country has so much to be grateful for. Let us look upon 2023 with fresh eyes and hearts and build the South Africa we all wish to reside within. Our democracy must be constructed from the people upwards and not from the top down.
Thank you for everything.
Honorable Shabangu, please.
In conclusion, Speaker, I wish you and everybody else that we've been associated with during the year a very, very blessed festive season, and may we come back with God's grace next year to continue with the work that has been entrusted upon us by millions of South Africans. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Singh. I now invite Honorable Dr. Mulder.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, colleagues, it's again that time of the year that we've come to the end of the term or the end of a session, and it's time to say farewell to one another. I heard the Chief Whip of the Democratic Alliance referred to enemies and opponents. Now, my father was in politics and he taught us many, many years ago that you must always remember people sitting opposite you are your opponents. People sitting behind you are quite often your enemies. And every one of us every one of us may know if that's true or not true. That's just one of the realities of politics, I guess. This has been a very difficult year, and I think that the whole COVID pandemic, to a very large extent, has changed the way that we operate in Parliament. That's just the reality. Unfortunately, we've been hit with a double jeopardy, because when Parliament burned down at the beginning of the year, it put us in a very impossible situation. Our task is to debate, is to talk to one another, to look each other in the eye, to interact in the corridors, to convince. That is what parliamentarians and politicians should do. And because our building was basically destroyed, we are in a worse position than most other people or other businesses or other people after the COVID reality. But we've got no choice. We have to move on, and we have to find a way to facilitate our workings as Parliament. We must ask ourselves, all of us, what is the perception of the public out there about us as politicians? How do they look at us? Do they say that we are doing a sterling job, all of us? Or are they saying, you know, politicians, and we all know what is being said about politicians in general? And that is a challenge for all of us. How are we going to change that perception about politics, political parties, and members of Parliament? That's our challenge. I want to thank the presiding officers for what they've done during the course of the year, in a difficult year, for Madam Speaker, the chairpersons, and all the Secretariat of Parliament that has accepted and done their job under these difficult circumstances. I want to thank, on behalf of all of us, the security staff that looks after our security and that makes sure that we can continue with our work on a daily basis. To all the administrative personnel behind all the parties, thank you for your loyalty and your support. I want to say, from the Freedom Front Plus's point of view, to all the colleagues in the room, in Parliament, we are not enemies. We are opponents. We have different views, but we all should always remember that in the end, it's not about us. It's not about our parties. It's about South Africa and the people that we serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Dr. Mulder. The next speaker on my list is Honorable Swart.
Thank you, Speaker. It has indeed been a very busy, tiring year with many challenges. And as other speakers have indicated, the year started with the devastating fire at Parliament. And almost a year later, we don't seem to be much closer to the truth as to what has happened. Yet, as the Deputy Chief Whip pointed out, despite the setback, Parliament has largely continued its lawmaking function and oversight function. And it's been a tough year. And it is imperative that we at this time spend more time with our families that have sacrificed so much for us to be here and our loved ones. Many of us are tired. Let us be encouraged by the words of our Lord Jesus Christ, who says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest." So remember to take a rest, keep the Sabbath. It's not a suggestion, but it is one of the 10 commandments for our own well-being. Honorable Sukkers, a message especially for you. The ACDP wishes to thank the Speaker, the Deputy Speaker, House Chairs, all the Chief Whips, the Chief Whips Forum, Whips, our own leadership in the ACDP, our members here, Honorable Wayne Thring, Reverend Kenneth Meshwe, and Maurice Sukkers, parliamentary staff, administrative, catering, interpreting, Hansard, legal, security, and police. We appreciate you all. Without you, and without your hard work and sacrifices, we could not perform our constitutional duties. We also thank the media representatives. Let us remember how fragile life is. Drive carefully on the roads, keep safe. Lastly, I would like to pray a blessing over all of us as we leave, although we know we're going to meet again next week. And it is from the Aaronic blessing. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord protect you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Malabangwe Gamalen Kosi. Amen. Thank you.
Amen. 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 Thank you very much, Honorable Swart. The next speaker will be the Honorable Member Kwangwa. Honorable Kwangwa. You are not there, Honorable Kwangwa. Oh, Korea. Korea, very familiar to represent. Okay, then Honorable ATM, Honorable Zungula. Now Korea. Oh, okay. Oh. Honorable B.N. Heron.
Speaker, I'm not in Korea, so I can say farewell.
Yes.
Speaker, thank you. 2022 once again came with enormous challenges for South Africa, especially at a time when we as a country were working to rebuild after the unprecedented global pandemic and its devastating impacts. Now, as the year comes to a close, it would have been the time to take a moment to stop, reflect, and refocus on the hard work that still lies ahead, but also to acknowledge the progress that we have made together. However, after 2 years of COVID uncertainty, South Africa finds itself ending another year with institutional uncertainty and with several questions surrounding our future. It is this uncertainty that could have many South Africans feeling concerned, confused, and looking for reassurance. It is our duty to reassure South Africans that we have a strong constitutional foundation on which our country and our democracy are built. The ground may feel shaky, but it is our duty to reassure South Africans that our foundation is solid and our democracy can withstand the vibrations in quicksand. Our Constitution and the privilege we have to serve the people of this country will continue to guide us. Despite our differences on certain issues, we can assure South Africans that we all do work to ensure that we put the interests of the people of this country first. We wish every South African a peaceful and safe festive season, and we commit to return in the new year to serve them even better. We wish all members of this National Assembly a well-deserved break, the time to enjoy friends and family, and a safe return in the new year. And lastly, in keeping with the question of uncertainty, we want to wish the ANC good luck with its upcoming elective conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Honorable Heron. The next speaker will be the Honorable Jafta, Honorable S.M. Jafta.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. 2022 was a progressive year for this Parliament. Despite initial challenges in the first quarter, we were able to hit the ground running as the Assembly of the People. Inspections in local and oversight visits in various mining towns drew our attention to mining syndicates and their operations. We passed the bills, consulted widely with the public, and made significant progress, such as the approval of money laundering and base erosion treaty. While some of the questions to the cabinet were answered, there were still outstanding questions to be filled. We are equally pleased with the office of the Speaker and commend her sterling leadership. We also appointed the new Secretary to Parliament and wish him well in the long run. We unfortunately lost a number of our colleagues in this chamber. We wish to again pass our condolences to their loved ones. We are indebted to our colleagues and staff support. We hope the upcoming year will be robust and the Parliament will continue to hold the executive to account without fear, favor, or prejudice. We wish everyone a Merry Christmas. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Jafta. I now invite Honorable W. Madisha.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I wish all the 400 members the best of luck as we take a break next week, though it ought to have been last week. Yes, I too thank you first. I know you tolerate us, some of us at times. I thank all the chief whips, our chairpersons, the programs committee, etc. You are all tired, I know. Some amongst us write speeches. Some amongst us get speeches written for them. Hence, when they come, they have a problem in reading or pronouncing some of the words. Some are tired because they must agree. Hence, even if you speak the truth, but then you are not from their party, they'll say, moo, ha. If I say, for example, no, the parliament in Cape Town, they'll say, If their member comes and say the parliament is in Soweto, they'll say, yo! And as they go down, the chief will hug them and say, and kiss them and so on. Although that is not correct. Now, these are some of the things which are there. So I am saying that you are tired. I have been in politics for 42 years, but then I can agree that parliament is more tiresome than what we went through. And I hope that we shall be able to move forward. I have been in this house for 13 years and I am extremely tired, truly extremely tired. If you come up, as you go down, they'll say, even if you can say that parliament is at Mana Lodge or wherever. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Madisha. Honorable Madisha, I don't know if you know what it means exactly when you say, because what basically you are saying we are puppies. I hope not. Okay. Or it's kisses. I'm told it's kisses.
No, I mean, as they go down, or as some of us not want go down, even after not having said anything proper, others will be saying, kissing them and so on.
Thank you, Honorable Madisha.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarity. Thank you.
On a point of order, Speaker.
Thank you. Point of order.
Speaker, on a
Yes.
point of order.
Yes, point of order. Yes, Honorable Member.
Yeah, thank you, Speaker. I officially request this House to nominate Honorable Madisha as our lead person on a TikTok.
Honorable Member, thank you very much for the nomination.
Honorable Speaker, just on
Honorable Dr. Mulder.
a point of information, I'm a bit concerned.
Order.
I'm not sure how Hansard is going to capture.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mulder. What it means is that indeed the TikTok will be a true reflection of the discussions. Honorable Mkalipi.
Speaker, I think the best way is for Madisha to say hong, hong, hong.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mkalipi. Honorable members, we proceed and I now invite the Honorable MGE Hendricks.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, Al-Jamaa would like to thank you for your leadership, especially for your support and guidance that enabled us in the last 2-3 months to have the first reading of 3 of our private members' bills to restore the dignity of Muslim wives and to give them access to the divorce court, and also to give all women in South Africa cash to enable them to reach the maintenance courts. Honorable Speaker, I was very impressed with some of the speeches. I remember the speech by the DA on amendments to the Children's Act, classic, that is in the Assembly. I remember the speech of the EFF in our Portfolio Committee on Water and Sanitation, a very classic. And the list go on. I think that the 400 members of parliament this year have worked very hard, and I hope that the nation appreciates it. And I wish them everything of the best for the festive season. I was a bit worried, Honorable Speaker, and I wanted to rule the Honorable Swart out of order when he said we must go on rest when a man of the cloth says you must rest, it can mean that you've got to rest forever. And I think he has clarified it by saying, no, we must have a nice holiday. I would like to thank the parliamentary legislative drafting team for their professionalism in assisting political parties to draft private members' bills. It is not only the responsibility of the governing party to draft bills, even if the instructions comes from the Constitutional Court or the High Court. It's a responsibility of every member of Parliament who has the interest to implement Constitutional Court rulings. You must not wait for the governing party or for the executive to do so. It is all our responsibilities. Lastly, Honourable Speaker, I think that the Minister of Social Welfare has set an example that other ministers must follow. She has opened the door for other political parties to take government programs to their constituencies. And I think that going forward, that is my wish for the new year. But thank you again, Honourable Speaker, for your leadership and for impartiality. Sometimes I don't know whether you are a member of the ANC or the DA or the EFF. That is the impartiality that you have. And even sometimes I think that you are a member of Al Jamaa. Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Hendricks. Thank you very much. Honorable members, allow me to also say a few words to bid you farewell. This year began with the horrifying news of the fire, which, as we know, destroyed much of the National Assembly building. We will take a long time to fully recover, and I'm aware that quite a number of honorable members still do not have working space. But despite the setbacks, we have persevered. I think we can sometimes lose sight of what we have achieved as a parliament and as a nation. In terms of lawmaking, this House has passed a number of bills which will have a significant impact on the people of South Africa and to our government. We also continue to move forward with other reforms to give meaning to the Constitution and expand service delivery. This parliament has also undertaken significant measures to advance accountability and ensure redress. Among these has been the commitment to respond to the recommendations made by the Judicial Commission into state capture. Another achievement was the recent adoption of the report, the culmination of many months' work which dealt with the devastating floods in KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape. This year, we have also renewed efforts to build capacity and sharpen the tools available to members. Despite the prevailing limitations, I've been encouraged by the extent of public engagements in our legislative processes with our communities. Public participation must nevertheless remain a priority, and we have embarked on a process to relook into our constituency outreach system. I was also pleased to participate in the training program for members earlier in the year. Honorable members, the new year will be a difficult one. We know we must do more to respond to the needs of our people. We know that poverty and unemployment and gender-based violence continue to plague us. We know we must rebuild. I'm, however, convinced that as a collective, we can prevail, as we can overcome. As I conclude, I wish to again send our condolences to families of those colleagues who have passed away. We must also send our well wishes to those suffering from ill health. I wish to thank the Secretary to Parliament who assumed office this year, as well as the officials for their contributions. I particularly want to single out, for me as a new person on the seat, the National Assembly table staff, led by Mr. Kaso, for your patience with, I'm not the easiest sometimes, and for your sterling efforts to constantly guide us as we steer the ship. I must also extend my appreciation to the presiding officers, all of them. Thank you very much, colleagues, for providing leadership and for always guiding me. I know it's not easy. I want to thank the whippery for your leadership. I don't see the chief whip. I think she's gone already. But chief whip, deputy chief whip, your entire team, chief whip of the majority part of the opposition party, all chief whips, nabanhlupayo, even those who are not easy to deal with programming committee. Nabanhlupayo, but thank you very much. I think you've really enriched my patience. I've had to learn to be very, very patient and move with everybody. Honorable members, my experience in Parliament has been, I've learned what it really means, the meaning of, when people say you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. I've actually learned the real meaning of that. And thanks God that one has had the opportunity to be here in Parliament and serve as a presiding officer. I think it has empowered me and it has strengthened my zeal to continue to serve. I wish to thank the honorable members, all of you. Honorable Papo, thank you. You've taught me a thing or two. I mean, as I sit here, remember all of you, I'm able to read body language. I'm able to read all of the things you do and says, and I can assure you that that has really assisted me. I think I understand the personalities better than I have ever done before. I beg your pardon? Ubani. Okay. Thank you very much, honorable members, for your service to the nation. Honorable members, I would like to say we are South Africans and we should remain South Africans. Thank you very much. Long live the speaker. Order, I request members to stand and wait for the chair and the mace to leave the chamber. That concludes the farewell speeches and the business for the day. The House is adjourned.